Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. This is your host, Michael Weaver, and I have got a special guest with us today, Mr. Zack Farris. How are you doing, Zack?
Good. How's it going, Michael?
Man, if I was any better, I don't know what I'd do with myself.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Oh, hey, man, let's get right into this. So I like to always start every episode off with, so who was Zack before insurance?
Man, so Zack was just a guy. I grew up in Southeast Texas and went to Texas A&M, got my bachelor's degree in business with a focus on marketing. And I knew right away that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So that's when I started researching companies. First landed on Farmers. I became an agency owner with Farmers Insurance for about 4.5-5 years. And then I went on to be an independent agent with Goosehead. So I was a franchise owner with them. And grew both of those agencies actually from scratch. The first one, Farmers, I grew that to $2 million in revenue. And then the Goosehead one to about $6 million by the time I sold.
Okay. No, that's awesome. And then obviously you've got the now. So, and we'll get to the now here in a second. But
yeah.
So what originally? So I love the idea. What originally made you want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, honestly, man, I grew up. My parents both worked at DuPont and Orange. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a chemical plant. They make Teflon, and they went to work from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. Just same old thing. And I was like, man, that is not for me. That doesn't sound very fun. I know they were providing, right? At the same time, we were the different generation. But at the same time, I was like, man, I want to do something I'm passionate about, that I connect with people, I can help them. And I think the only way to do that and make the money that I want to do, to do that and live the lifestyle that I want, is to be in insurance and to be an entrepreneur, period.
Absolutely, man. I love that. Were you from like a small town, or was it a little bit bigger town?
Yeah, from a small town, about 14,000 people.
Okay. It's funny you say all that, because my parents were awesome, just great salt of the earth people, but very similar, like 9 to 5, and I grew up in a town of 4,500 people, and it's like, man, I don't know if I want to like do that 9 to 5 thing. And then in school, I would always I worked all the jobs, concrete, roofing, like all the fiberglass. It's like, okay, this shit is not for me. Like I respect the hell out of people that do that, but man, this is not for me. And so so then entrepreneur, which comes with its struggles in itself. So how exactly did you? I don't think anyone, unless maybe you're fortunate enough to maybe be raised by insurance, but I don't think anyone's like, let's go be an insurance agent. Like, how'd you get turned on to Farmers?
Man, honestly, so I took a class in college. It was personal selling, and I'll never forget his name, Dr. Futrell. I think he was like 72, still going hard teaching, right, in college. And he talked about, we asked him one day in question, I was like, hey, what's the hardest thing to sell? And he said, insurance, because it's an intangible, right? You're selling a piece of paper to somebody who they already need this, right? They already need coverages and protection, and you're essentially selling a fear-based product. Like, what if I get in an accident? Well, what if I don't? So, I mean, that's a tough sell, but what really intrigued me into it is the renewals that you can make in this industry. And a lot of people don't realize that. You have your real estate, your mortgage. Those are more transactional, right? Because you sell a house, well, then you got to find another client, because unless they send you referrals, right? And so I think that's really what just intrigued me, was hey, if I do $50,000 or $100,000 my first year, I'm going to get paid on that book of business again as long as I keep those customers happy, which that's hard to do right now with the marketplace, right?
Oh man.
But man, it's fantastic.
So it's interesting. So you liked the idea of the challenge of selling an intangible product, and then obviously the residual income does not suck for sure. Like that's it's
right.
And I think a lot of people get confused. Maybe like it's not passive income. You're still working until you maybe can establish the business. So it's a hell of a lot of hard work. But the residual income is really cool to be able to write something today and still get paid on it next year and the following. So what about an intangible product? So I want to dive into this for a second. What about the challenge of that intrigued you?
Well, I think, it's an intangible product, but it's at the same time like this is people's lives we're dealing with, right? I mean, it's a piece of paper, but we're dealing with people's lives, and if they don't have the correct coverage, and they're in an accident, and they find out, hey, you weren't even covered for that on your policy. I mean, dude, that's huge. So, I mean, that's why the agents are at a forefront of any insurance company. It's because we're the ones educating these clients on what type of protection they need first, and then is this enough? Or is this not enough? And so I think I do like the challenge of it, but more so I love helping people. Honestly, it's a service. It's really a service-based industry as much as it is selling commodities.
Yep.
Right. I feel like insurance. Would you agree that I feel like insurance is heading down more of a commodity sale, as much as we don't want it to be?
Man. So I think the Geicos of the world have really they've been advertising for 30 years to our generation of, hey, buy this because it's cheap, buy this because it's cheap, buy this because it's cheap. And so I think that as a producer, that you are the one responsible for making it not a commodity. You're the one responsible for having that value-based sales conversation, because if you're not having the conversation, then hell yes, it's going to be a commodity, and they're only going to want to go to the cheapest rate, because what you're saying is they're not consumers don't know what car insurance is boring. House insurance is all they care about is, hey, if my house burns down, I need to be covered. If I get into an accident, I need to be covered. But what they don't understand is, well, you can be covered, but you may not be covered for the right amount.
Or the right type of coverage.
That's right.
Like, I mean, you have the huge thing nowadays is like your water damage and your seepage and leakage and, all those different endorsements that might not even be what the carrier adds or has and offers. So those are becoming huge issues, especially up here in the DFW area with all the ice. The ice storm we had? Was it last year, the year before? I mean, dude, we got hammered.
Yep.
On that.
So I do think you bring up a valid point, though, because I think commercials continue to commoditize the insurance. Now, when you get to life insurance and things like that, it's a little bit different, but I do think that that's a big struggle that a lot of producers really struggle with, and that's why I think you have to have that differentiating conversation. Like I always say, like if you're not unique, you're weak. If you're not different, you're going to lose. Like if you try to have the same conversation, which isn't much that like a Geico's having, then you're gonna lose to them, man. Like they're gonna beat you on rates every time.
Yep, exactly.
So all right, so you got turned on to farmers, and we're with them for 4 years. That's awesome. Most people. So and you sounds like you built a heck of a book if you were doing $2 million in revenue. So. What made you? Most people at $2 million in revenue are going to be like, feet up on the table. Let's start cashing checks. What made you, number one, like even consider leaving, and then obviously you decided to make the switch?
Well, honestly, the reason I switched is because I started seeing more and more of an issue with credit, right? So when I was getting started, it was people of my age, 23, 24, 25 years old. And if you don't have good credit, you know this just as well as anybody, Farmers is not going to take you. So what really did it for me is, I was getting blown up by recruiters all the time going, hey, go independent, you can make so much money, blah, 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 and I'm just like, let me give this lady a chance. Let me just entertain her with a discovery call, if you will. And so I went through that, and they showed me the numbers, and I was just like astounded. I was like, if this is really true and accurate, I could triple my revenue easily in a couple of years.
Okay. Doing
the volume of business that we were. And so I think that's ultimately what led me to that, is that curiosity we have as entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, man. So I think, and so the captive route. So obviously captives, you're representing one company, which is great. So you went to a company, Goosehead. I don't know a ton about Goosehead, but I know that they offer multiple providers, which I assume was intriguing to you, because with more providers, it increases your chances of writing business, increases your closing ratios. But my question for you is, and this stood out earlier, so $2 million in revenue, and then you switched, grew it to $6 million in revenue. What were some of your strategies to write that much? I mean, that's a lot of new business acquisition. All right. So talk about some strategies that you did in those first 6 years, because you were with Farmers for 4 years and then Goosehead for 2. Is that what you said?
No. So I was with Farmers for 4.5.
Okay.
And then I was with Goosehead for about 3.
Okay. And Goosehead, you grew to $6 million. So what are some acquisition strategies? Because this is a question I always get asked by a lot of agency owners that, hey, you were growing exponentially. What did that look like?
Yeah. So honestly, like I said, I grew up in a small town. So a lot of people knew my family. At the same time, a lot of people knew my ex-wife's family. And that just so happened to be her father was a real estate agent. So referral partners was the biggest way that we grew our business as fast as we did, because we worked with, I think as an agency as a whole, we had about 102 referral partners we worked with. And so when you have that many, even if they feed you 1 or 2 a day, or 1 or 2 a week each, that's a lot of volume coming in.
That's huge. So so this is the magic question. How do you establish relationships with 100 with 100 mortgage agents or 100 real estate agents? How do you do that?
So you have to add value to them in some way, right? So what I learned to do from one of my mentors, who I don't know if I could say his name, but I guess we could. I'll just go ahead and say it. Tim Thompson. Are you familiar with him?
Tim Thompson?
Yeah.
That used to work with Grant Cardone?
No, Tim Thompson, he worked for, he's Farmers District Manager.
So no, I don't think I know that Tim. I know a Tim Thompson, but not that Tim.
No, so, he just taught me, little value propositions here and there, but as far as when it comes to partnering with somebody, you have to bring value to them in some way. And so I figured out the way to do that is, if you can get in front of a loan officer or a mortgage broker, right, and say, hey, essentially what you're saying is, hey, I know you probably work with an insurance agency or an insurance agent already, but all I'm asking for is one deal. Give me an opportunity to show you how I treat the client, how I can take care of them, how, at 10 o'clock at night, if they have a question, or I'm gonna answer it for you. I'm going to be as responsive as you are, if not more. And so my pitch to them after I got that commitment was like, what if I can get you in front of some realtors? Right? So the goal here is, a lot of people, I see a lot of these agents nowadays, they'll do like big happy hours. You get 50, 80 agents, loan officers, realtors, title companies. That's good. That's good. But at the same time, if realtors like I do at this point in the journey, they're very, very finicky, and they come for the free food and the drinks, right? So I'm not trying to bash realtors out there. I just want y'all to know that. I'm just saying that's the reality. I mean, hey, I'm going to go for free food and drinks too.
Oh, yeah.
But what I did differently is I said, hey, let's get 3 or 4 real estate agents, maybe in the same office or maybe different ones. Let's get them in an intimate setting. Maybe say, hey, like if you're appealing to the lady realtors out there, let's go have a mani or petty day where you can actually go sit next to them, get to know each and every one of them, build that relationship with them. And here you are, a new loan officer, or whether you're established, you just have 4 new realtors that you really got to intimately know from just a little get together, and you swallowed your pride by getting a mani and petty. So that's really how I approached it, and it really, really worked very well. And so that's what I taught all of our agents and producers when we onboarded them, is saying, hey, this works, let's go out and hammer it. And they saw instant results from doing that.
So I love the fact that you're concentrating on more of that like one-on-one, like a smaller, more intimate connection versus, hey, like let's bring 100 people together and see what happens. Exactly. And again, like it is what it is, but I think it's like the shotgun approach versus like the bam, I've got him in my sights rifle approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. So how long, because this is the other question I always get asked, because this isn't a one, I don't think it's a one-time thing. Maybe you're going to tell me wrong here. Like, how long does it actually take to establish relationships like that?
I mean, it's just like any relationship. I mean, what you put into one is what you're going to get out of it, right? And so it's just like a friendship. I mean, if you had a friend since your childhood days, I mean, if you're not texting or hitting them up, you're probably not going to be friends with them much longer. It's the same way with your referral partners. You have to nurture that relationship, whether it's, going out to happy hours, asking how their kids are doing. It's being responsive to them. Like, hey, their kid's having a birthday, send them a card, send them a gift card. Just showing them that you actually care about them and their family, and just treat it like you would any relationship. Because that's, people do business with people who they know, like, and trust, not just somebody who's trying to get money.
Yep. Man, yeah, man, that's so here's the, and I love that you're hitting on this, because I think I don't think I know. All right, so people are always looking for that. Well, I want to develop referral partners. I want centers of influence. I want that magic bullet. I want that secret sauce. I want people calling me for a quote. But what you just explained to me is a hell of a lot of work. And here's the thing. If you don't like going out and networking and like going to events and like schmoozing and like, then that's not going to be for, like, when you explain that personally, like that's not my, like, me, like, in that, and we had some referral partners, but we didn't have 100, like, because that is a hell of a lot of work. And I know you can divide and conquer with your team, but it's a lot of work no matter how you swing it.
Sure is.
Is that fair? Like, are you like, yeah.
It's a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of money.
That's what and so I love that, man, this is good. Okay. This is good. This is a transparent conversation, because that's it. Just all right. So bam, referral partners. That's how you did it. That's you grew exponentially. So bam, you grew a hell of a book at Goosehead. Again, most people are going to be like, man, I'm doing pretty good here. I'm making a good living, $6 million in revenue. We're good. But you're like, we're not good. It's time to make another change.
Exactly, man. So I'm always thinking bigger, right? So. Personally, I just didn't like writing policies every single day, the grind, right? I mean, we make great money. I love helping people, but even better, I want to build an empire. And everybody always talks about an empire, But there was a lot of things that went that I felt I learned at Goosehead that they could do a lot better. And, and I'm not saying, hey, I got the magic, potion or whatever, but I just wanted to capitalize on what I've learned at Farmers and then at Goosehead and make it my own and find another problem out there, which we can get into later, and solve for it in the insurance industry. And then why not recruit agents to come work for us who are going to write the policies for us and give them all the bells and whistles, the top tier commission splits, your 24/7 customer care, your marketing and training, all resources, everything you need to be successful in this industry, because it's a grind. You got to constantly prospect. If a lot of these agents we bring on, I'm learning, you start to learn, you have to teach them how to be a business owner because they might not know. You have to think like a business owner in this industry, especially because carriers, they don't really care about their agents. They say they do, but if your loss ratio and your profitability is hindering their success, they will terminate you in a heartbeat. So that's one of the things that I'm focusing on with Fortreator is solving the problem through a software we'll get into here in a little bit, but also by teaching these agents who come on board and how to be business owners, and also giving them the tools and the competitive commission splits and things that come with that to be successful in this industry. Because I'm in here for the long run. I'm not just here to make quick money. I really, like our agency, we're founded for agents by agents. So I was an agent myself, right? I'm not in the trenches writing policies anymore because I'm trying to grow our business.
Okay. So obviously you started captive, then you went to more of an independent. Goosehead independent / franchise model, all right, and then so you started your own independent type of brokerage model. Is that fair?
Right.
Is that what
so it's very Fortreator. It's very similar to a Brightway or a Goosehead franchise model. We just don't do the FDD disclosures. We don't have all the branding guidelines and things like that in place. Now, is that coming? I think it's coming in the future.
Yeah.
I don't know how long yet. But I will say that we are pretty similar to an IMO model.
Okay. No, man, that's cool, and that's a cool journey, because look, just because. And this is what I've started to learn in talking with lots of folks, is just because one model fits one person really great, it may not. Look, just because if you really love captive, great. If you really love independent, great. At the end of the day, you have to love what you do. Not only have you love what you do, you have to love what you represent. You have to love the products you sell. Like, there's something about that, because if you don't love it, then you're going to get burnout. You're going to start questioning, why am I even doing this? You're going to start maybe even looking for different industries or different careers. And so I think that's the beautiful thing about the insurance industry in general, is it can fit a lot of different personalities, a lot of different models. And so that's what I love. And so that's what I've heard from you. Like, you had a really cool journey to get you to where you're like, okay, this is it. And I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely, man. And it's been a journey, Shoot, my parents will tell you it's been a journey. I mean, they're like, oh my gosh, what is this kid doing? Like, why can't he just go to work and get a paycheck? I'm like, that's just not for me. It's really not.
No, man. So, all right. So Fortrade. So so not only are you worried about helping your current agents, you have a pretty big goals and dreams, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, man, shoot. Where do I start? Yeah, so as far as Fortreator, I mean, that came to... What's funny, and I'll touch on this a little bit. So when we first launched, we were actually a different name. I won't get into the name, but we had a little trademark dispute and went through all of that. Fortunately, we were able to settle and come out on top on that. But I think that since there was already two names, I literally just took the thing and I was like, hey, let's just rebrand. We're still new. We're a year and a half, almost 2 years in. Let's just get a totally different name. And so we did that, and man, we're just off and running now. So soon we just launched the new name change on September 1st.
Okay.
And as soon as that hit, man, like we rolled out everything. We have a PR firm, as you know, our people will hit you up, and man, I'm trying to go big. I'm a big follower of Grant Cardone's, and so one of the things I love, he says, he's like, hey, he seems like he's an impulsive person like me. Like he's like, hey, let's just go all in and figure the other shit out later. Well, that's honestly what I've done. I'm like, hey, we're gonna have problems, but every company has problems. They have growing pains, right? To be successful and huge, every multi-billion-dollar company has had growing pains. I guarantee it.
You're using the B word. Well, Uncle G in that 10X rule, baby. Yeah, man. Just
10X rule.
Figure it out. You're, yeah, man. If you're not establishing growing pains, then you probably ain't growing. And let's face it, growth is hard to start. It's nasty as hell in the middle, but it is beautiful at the same time, and especially at the end.
Absolutely.
But you got to go. I always tell people you got to wade through the shit before you get to green pastures, though, man. Like, all W's, all dubs are stacked on a bunch of L's. They're all stacked on a bunch of learning lessons. Like, if you're not failing, you're not trying. Like, at the end of the day, like, you have to have the guts to fail.
Yep.
And if you aren't willing to fail, you're never going to accomplish the success that you're talking about accomplishing. Because success is different to everybody. But, man, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to take those learning lessons. Because if you're not, that means you're not growing, which means, look, I'm a firm believer there's no middle ground here. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Like, it's not like you're just stagnant.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, it honestly has been a journey. Working with our management team, and we have advisors and things like that, it's been crazy. And I will tell you, like, my mom will tell you, I'm impulsive. I am. And so, we're at the point now, like, I make a decision, and I'm like, hey, let's just make it happen, right? It's $50,000 a month in expenses. Let's get it. That means we have to have, $100,000 in revenue. Mm-hmm. Or at least 50 at the end, we might have to have at least 50,000 in revenue. If there's one thing I've been successful at, it's hitting goals and numbers.
So have you, this is more of like a personal question in business, but I think it's good to ask somebody. So have you brought on like that more of a, all right, so you're a creative for sure. You're creative. You're that personality. Have you brought on more of that COO type of integrator personality that will kind of work with your blind spots? Maybe be like, all right, I see where you're going, Zach. Let's think about this for a second. Let's have you brought somebody like that on yet?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, our COO, she keeps me in check.
Which is what they're supposed to do, right?
Exactly. She compliments me well, I will tell you that. She's like, hey, I love the enthusiasm. I love it. But let's put the brakes on that for right now. And then sometimes I'm like, you know what? That's great advice. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I just had to ask that because we we just recently hired a COO about 3-4 months ago because my wife and I are we both do Weaver Sales Academy co-owners. We both complement each other really well, except for we're both super creatives. All right, we're super creatives. Okay. We're both like what you're saying, like let's go, let's push, let's do this. And I had to ask you that because it's the same thing. Like Jody she's been a blessing because she's like, I see where y'all are going. We can get there, but let's just tame her, like not tame your spirit, but let's work through this real fast. All right, let's look at the blind spots. Let's see what may get in the way before you actually get there. And so I love that you've done that, man. That's good.
For sure. And I will say that's one thing that she has really helped is, let's get those systems and processes set up before we just pull the trigger to where it can bite us in the butt later.
Yep. No, man.
So yeah, love it.
So what's the, you mentioned something earlier about a big problem that you're seeing. Is that anything you want to touch on? Yeah. So, I see a huge issue in the independent agent world for insurance of the amount of time it takes from quoting a policy to binding the policy. We kind of talked a little before the show, like there's so many different CRMs you can use, so many different AMS systems you can use, comparative raters. A lot of these people, including myself, it's pretty overwhelming from the amount of different softwares out there that you can choose from. Not only do you have to choose them, you have to learn how to use them if you've never used them before. And when you do start using them, it takes quite a bit of time to input everything into your CRM, to run it through the comparative rater. If you don't have any kind of API set up or you're using Zapier to do integrations and all these integrations, you don't even know where to start, it can be very overwhelming. So what we've done to solve the issue of the time it takes from quoting to bind, which takes about 45 minutes to an hour, is we've come up with a software to reduce the time it takes a quote to bind to under 2 minutes. Oh, 2 minutes, huh?
2 minutes.
Man, that 45 minutes to 2 minutes, I think that's that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's pretty dang good. So, we our plan is to roll this out to every independent agent eventually.
Yeah.
And without giving away what exactly the software does, because it's still in a patent pending stage, I'm not going to talk about that.
Yep.
But it's going to be an industry disruptor for sure.
And I dig that. Innovation's always a beautiful thing. That's actually why Courtney and I started Weaver Sales Academy too, just the different things we do in the training space. But the thing I want to talk about real fast though is not necessarily the actual technology itself, but how you came about it, because I think this is something that it really stood out to me earlier before our call. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about you and your wife and how you what you all do every single day, because I think regardless of personal life, professional life, you came up with potentially $1 billion idea. But man, what you all do every day really stood out. So I'd love for you to touch base on that.
Yeah, so man, honestly, Shannon and I, we go back and forth and do brainstorming every day. There's so many different problems in the world that can be solved. And with her background of being a software executive, and then mine just being that creative person, you were talking about, and wanting to solve the world's problems, we just started making it a habit, and honestly, we do it usually over some wine, or we're just eating dinner and chilling on the couch. We just sit there, and I'll just get out my phone and I'll just start texting out notes, or sometimes I'll even make voice memos for just different problems in the world. And using that creative mind that God's blessed me with, right? And it's not to say that, hey, I'm going to be able to do every single one of them. But I'll tell you what, if I can do at least 1, 2, 3 in a lifetime, then, I feel like I'm using my gifts.
Well, you're hitting on number one. I believe in over communication. Like, you got to be intentional with what you're doing, priority. And it sounds like that's what you and your spouse do. Like, you're having intentional conversations every single night. Not only your 10 to 20 minute brainstorming session, but I'm sure you're also talking about, hey, how'd the day go? What's going on in your life? Any struggles? All right. So
absolutely,
that type of communication is key, I think, for business owners. I'm glad you shared that because so many times business can sometimes take us away from those things that may be most important, like our family, like our spouse, like our kids. And so you're prioritizing time with your, not only time, but intentional communication, conversation with your wife every single night. And I think there's something to be said about that. I think the other thing that you just said is a really major takeaway. It's something that my wife actually helped me with. So my wife and I do something similar. We talk for 30 minutes every single day. Like, every single night, 30 minutes, we're having an intentional conversation. Just, hey, how's the day? Listening to each other, ideas, how's the business, whatever. But the one thing you just said that I don't want people to overlook is taking notes on your phone, voice memoing, because that's going to make sure that you don't forget it. So many times we have these beautiful ideas that come to our mind, and we're like, oh, we'll get it. At least me, I used to say, oh, I'll remember this. I'll get it later. Or, yeah, I'll get back to that. And then all of a sudden, the later never happens. The getting back to it never happens. I'm like, shoot, what was that good idea again? And so that's been one thing that literally, like, notes, like, whether I'm in my meditation in the morning, whether I'm working out, when I have a really good idea come to my mind, wham, cell phone, notes, and I'm writing it down.
Absolutely. That's the key, man. Like, I can't tell you, honestly, this might sound weird, but most of my ideas come when I'm in the shower. And I think it might be something to do with, the relaxation, of being in a hot shower. I have no clue, or just my mind's finally turned off for the day. But then, boom, like, something pops in my head. And I'm like, hey, I just say it over and over. I'm like, I don't want to forget that. So my ADD will kick in. I'll be like, hey, Alexa, remind me of this.
Man, it's funny you say that. I do that a lot too. Like, the shower is a calm, relaxing place for me as well. And that's where a lot of good ideas come to me, man. Well, Zach, it's been a pleasure, man. Like, I want to be respectful of your time. Awesome. This has been a great conversation. Awesome. Obviously, we'll post everything in show notes, but if somebody did want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to either follow you on socials or connect with you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Zack.Farris, and you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm probably more on LinkedIn than anything. I'm on Facebook as well, or you can just look us up on fortriator.com, and that's FORTRIATOR, and we combine fortress and gladiator is where we came up with the name. So
I dig that. Well, brother, man, thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. For all of you out there, as you know, time is the most valuable and important asset that we all have. I appreciate your time. Go out and make it great, my friend.